today's topic is energy, and we're just going to go through some of the basics of energy. Did one of your friends grab it for you?
I don't know. It's another
What? Yeah, someone must have grabbed it for you. All right.
Thank you.
First thing we need to describe is this idea of natural capital. Natural capital is all of our resources that if we manage them correctly, if we are sustainable in our use, we will always have this available to us. These are things that renew or replenish, and they have economic value. So all of our timber is considered natural capital. Because if I use it correctly, I will always have it for energy or for building things. All of our grains, if I manage that land correctly, I will always have that for eating and also for energy, because we're using that now as a form of biofuel. This is natural capital. Couple of terms. A renewable natural capital is something that is growing. It is something that does photosynthesis and harnesses the energy of the sun. It is a living species. It's an ecosystem. If we use it correctly, it will always be there. This is different than a replenishable natural capital. If I'm going to replenish it, I'm going to be able to replace it, essentially. Water is a replenishable natural capital. So just like we talked about in water, when I recharge our aquifers, when I'm putting water back into the aquifers. And then non-renewable. Non-renewable is all of our fossil fuels. So it's coal, it's oil, it's natural gas. Once we use it, it's gone. That's all there is to it. Energy security is the knowledge that I can come home, flip a switch, and I'm going to have lights. If I have energy security, I know how I'm going to be able to cook my food, heat my house, right? Light myself up in the dark. That's energy security. Not everyone in this country has energy security. So people who are going through hard financial times might have a house, but they might not be able to pay their electric bill or their gas bill. And so they don't know when they get home, if they flip a switch, if they're going to get that. On a grander scale, we have countries that don't have energy security. These are countries that don't have their own sources of energy within their borders. There are political influences in this, and we're going to see on the next slide, the latest energy skirmish was between Russia and the Ukraine. When Russia decided that they wanted the Ukraine back within its borders, there was a little bit of a battle going on, and what you need to know is that Russia controls all of the energy for the Ukraine. Ukraine imports 100% of its energy from Russia. Well, when Russia decided they wanted Ukraine back, and Ukraine was going, nah, I don't think so, we want to keep our own country, Russia said, fine, and they capped the pipelines. And they said, you want to be your own country, figure out how to heat and cool and have electricity for your own country. At that point, the UN kind of stepped in and mediated a little bit. But if you don't have your own energy sources, it puts you in a vulnerable spot. We can mitigate this. In the United States, we somewhat have by having multiple sources of energy. So yeah, we still import a main amount of oil from other countries, but we are starting to diversify. So in addition to using oil and natural gas as energy sources, we have solar, we have hydroelectric, we have wind. If those other countries decide that they're not going to export oil to the United States anymore, we'll be okay, because we have other ways of getting our energy. If something happens, and let's say, nuclear bomb, dystopian environment, and there's no more gas or oil or electricity flowing through the wires, this school would still be able to run. Why? We get 80% of our energy from those solar panels out on the parking lots. So we have energy security within our own school because we have multiple sources of energy. I'm going to show a little video clip on what our energy choices are. Again, we have the conventional. And conventional is coal, oil, natural gas. And now we've got what are considered kind of alternatives, but they're becoming more mainstream of solar, hydroelectric, geothermal, and wind.
By the way, if you're looking for an efficient way to buy a domain name, look no...
All right, all of this is based on availability of supply. When we think about the different energy choices that the video presented, does solar make sense everywhere in the world? No, if you live in the Arctic Circle, that only works half of the year. The other half, you don't even get sunlight, period, so you're not going to have solar up there. If you live somewhere where it's never windy, wind is not a great choice. If you live somewhere that you don't have your own, within your borders, supply of oil, maybe oil is not what you want to depend on. So you have to look at the availability of supply. What's out there for us to use? As technology gets better, so does our efficiency. So the solar panels he referenced are about 47% efficient. Hopefully, as the technology increases, because solar is relatively new technology, we will continue to get more and more efficient. Next week we're going to have in Ms. Ushada again, and she's going to come and talk about solar energy. And then on Wednesday we'll make our own little solar cockroaches, hopefully, and kind of play with the efficiency of solar energy. Politics, obviously the Ukraine-Russia, huge issue with politics. There's a lot of other politics that go into this. There's price setting. Venezuela, almost all of their oil production is now government run. And that government, if you follow the news this year, is kind of shaky. So that's a scary thing. Politics obviously play into this. Politics in our own country play into this. Depending on who's president determines how much we're going to go after our own reserves. Because to go after our reserves, a lot of them are in ecologically sensitive areas. So that's scary. Economics, this is the price of things. How do we control how expensive this technology is? Cultural attitudes, we are a car culture in Southern California. We all want our cars. That's how I punish my own kids, right? You lose access to the car if you don't do what I want you to do. And then they work hard to get that access back. We're a car culture. If you're in a city like New York, in the actual city part, you don't own a car. So a lot of that plays into our energy choices as well. Sustainability, we're going for renewable resources now, and then obviously environmental considerations. As we talk about this, every energy choice that you make has pros and cons. The goal here is to have the pro outweigh the cons. Even all of our renewable resources have pros and cons. We talked about Ukraine, Russia. We've realized that we have a huge amount of what we call shale oil. This is not like a huge, easily accessible pocket of oil. We've pretty much used those easy, accessible pockets of oil. Now we've got oil that's kind of like a dispersed aquifer. When you think about water and think of that video about aquifers where it's kind of spread out in these rock layers, we have oil that's spread out in the rock layers. It's harder to get to. But we think we have up to 3.5 million barrels of oil in this not greatly accessible shale oil in the United States within our borders. If we can come up with the technology to efficiently harvest it without damaging the environment too much, it will take us from a net importer of oil to almost a net exporter of oil. That could be huge. Countries like Denmark are producing 30% of their energy from wind. This switch over was government forced. So essentially the country said, we're going to tax the carbon emissions so much that you have no choice but to go to a renewable resource. California is trying that same kind of vein. Two big laws were passed in 2018 in regards to our energy in California. SB 100, green energy, we touched on with our pretest yesterday. It says by 2030, we have to have 60% of our energy generated through solar or wind. But look at the next one. By 2045, we have to be 100% renewable. Not quite sure if that's achievable, but that's what the law says right now. AB 1775 and SB 834, these were passed because President Trump was loosening the reins on environmentalism, was saying, yeah, go ahead, go for oil anywhere you want. And California kind of slapped back at that by passing these two bills. And they said, no. We are not going to have random oil drilling up and down our state. By the way, our state does have huge oil reserves. We just, because of environmental concerns, don't tap into them as much as we could. There's one more law that was passed that is not on here. As of 2020, any new construction house built within the state of California is required to have solar panels. So all of those homes in Irvine, any home that is currently in the process of being built is required to have solar panels on the top of them. So that is a push towards this. What does that do to the price of the homes, though? Increases them. So we have a housing crisis in California where we've got a ton of homes. What we don't have is a ton of affordable homes. This law that is saying every new construction home has to have solar on it doesn't help with our housing crisis. There is some math that will pop up with this unit because with APES, with AP Environmental, they like you to do some math. Here's where I want you to take a breath. A lot of the math that I have seen in the last 3 years of teaching the class has been the conversion between a gigajoule and a joule and an exajoule. So you need to memorize those conversion points. But then it's been like, if the Williams family switches from incandescent lights to LED lights, how much energy will they save? And they'll talk about how much energy they were using with this light bulb and then how much they're going to use with the new light bulb, and you have to do the math to figure out their energy savings. It's essentially algebra, so I don't want you to stress too much on this whole deal. I am going to show you a video about what the different ideas and terms and units of energy mean. But again, the math I have seen with it has not been overly complicated. So we're not talking like, oh my God, I need to know physics to do energy conversion.
That's energy units.
Okay, again, don't worry about the complicated so much as just realizing that you can go from a gigajoule to an exajoule to a quadjoule. Those conversions you do need to know. Other than that, it's going to be a basic algebra problem. If you look at our historic energy usage, starting in 1920 when we kind of started keeping track of this, going towards current, you're going to see that crude oil still is a mass majority of what we're utilizing. But recently, we have gone to more renewable resources. So coal is this blue, but purple is nuclear. We're kind of phasing out nuclear in the United States. A lot of other countries are still using it. Solar is this kind of yellow color, so we are pushing towards more and more renewable resources. Just the same graph, kind of in a new way of looking at it. Couple of patterns of energy use. Overall, MEECs use more power than LEDCs. So more economically developed countries use more power than less economically developed countries. Not necessarily because we are not environmentally friendly, but because we have more access to it. So a less economically developed country, you have entire villages that aren't on the grid, that don't have access to electricity, that don't have access to power. But some of the current trends are that our individual use has decreased. So as an individual, we are becoming more environmentally conscious. We're turning off the lights when we leave a room. We are charging our cell phones all day. We're becoming more environmentally conscious. But global use is still increasing. The reason why, even though as individuals we're becoming better, globally we're increasing, is because of the mass amount of people on the planet, and most of those people are now getting access to energy. So if you think about India and China, they are coming on board. They're coming onto power grids. And so you're seeing an increase in energy consumption just because we have more people getting access to energy consumption. Energy use per GDP has decreased. That means that the richer countries are starting to use less energy. Again, not because we're becoming more environmentally friendly, but because our technology has gotten better. So now instead of using an old-fashioned light bulb, an incandescent light bulb, we use an LED that uses 1/10 of the energy to produce the same amount of light. So our technology in our richer countries has become more energy efficient. One of the things of note on that map is all of the areas of the globe that didn't have any color on it. Those are areas that don't have access to electricity. Those are a lot of our less economically developed countries. I'm going to skip the Hubert curve. Essentially, this is looking at when are we going to run out of oil. And we're not going to worry too much about it because I haven't seen it on a test in a long time. Patterns of energy use. A commercial energy source is something that is bought and sold. All of the energy that you guys use is a commercial energy source. So your parents pay your electric bill every year. They are buying that electricity from SoCal Edison or San Diego Gas and Electric. You go to ARCO to fill up your car. You are buying that energy source from the gas company. All of those are commercial energy sources. We also have subsistence energy sources. These are ones that are gathered for individual use. This is going out and cutting down a tree to put wood in your fireplace. This is the entire group of less economically developed countries that dry out cow poop or ox dung and use that then to heat their homes or cook their food. All of that is subsistence. It's subsistence because it is 100% renewable, right? That cow, as long as it's alive, is going to continue to poop and provide you with that energy source. So how much longer? These estimates vary depending on who you talk to. We think that we have about 230 years of coal left. So if we continue to use coal at our current rate, in about 230 years, we'll run out of it. Remember, these are non-renewable. Once they're gone, they're gone. Natural gas, about 170 years. And my data said 100 years. The video I'm going to show you in a second says 50. Neither of those estimates are great. That means that within your children's lifetime, we will not have oil as an energy source.
We do know where we get it from.
In the 1970s, we had the first of the United States' energy crises. We had the big muscle cars. Think about the Camaros and the Mustangs. And we were in love with these big, gas-guzzling, fast cars. And we were using gas really, really quickly. And we weren't in best terms with some of our countries that we import oil from. And so in the 1970s, we had a gas shortage. Depending on whether your license plate was even or odd, if it was even, you could only buy gas on even days. If it was odd, you could only buy gas on odd days, which meant you really had to make sure that your car had what it needed to get you where you needed to go. In 2008, oil prices were about $145 a barrel. As of February 9th, they were $55 a barrel. Gas prices have actually gone down, or oil prices have actually gone down. Now, why don't we see it represented in our pumps here in California? The gas taxes. So in California, most of what you are paying at the pump is a tax. We have earthquake taxes, we have the train to nowhere tax, we have the carb tax. So they basically are putting all of these extra taxes on your gas. In addition, in California, we have really big environmental regulations for what our emissions are going to look like. Because of that, we have to refine our gas more than other states. Refining just means taking out the impurities. And we have two different blends of gas that we sell. We've got the winter blend and the summer blend. The winter blend has more impurities. It's not hot out, so we can have the tailpipe put out a little bit more emission. The summer blend is pretty pure. We normally switch from winter to summer around Labor Day, and that's why you're going to see a jump in your gas prices around Labor Day. I'm not going to show the oil prices explained video, but it is kind of interesting. It talks about how you have this conglomerate of about 12 different countries that are your main oil producing countries, and they kind of set the price. And the way they do that is by supply and demand. So if the price starts dropping, like it's dropped really low right now, what they're going to do is turn off the tap. They're not going to produce as much oil. Well, once the supply goes down, what happens to the price? Goes back up. But Russia's playing a game here too, because Russia wants to take over as a main exporter of oil. So as OPEC, these 12 countries, stop supplying as much oil, Russia goes, that's all right, I've got enough over here to make up for what they're not supplying. So now you've got these two different suppliers fighting. Well, when you have two different suppliers fight over a consumer, you all are the consumer, the prices tend to drop as well once you have competition. So it's kind of an interesting video, especially if you're into econ and history. We're just not going to show it today for time. How are we going to lessen our energy use then? How are we going to lessen our dependency on energy? We can do energy conservation. You guys did your entire AP with We project on lessening our energy use here on campus, right? Unplug your Chromebooks, turn off your lights. You don't need every bank of light on in order to teach. We can become more energy efficient. As technology increases, we are becoming more energy efficient. Some of you guys that have class in like the new sparkly classrooms that instead of a projector have a 75-inch TV in them, that's an energy efficiency thing. Those TVs draw less power than the smart boards. They draw less power than the old school projectors. They are more energy efficient. Tiered rate system is a punishment system. So in our area, especially if you're SoCal Edison, we've got 3 tiers of energy price. For the first like 200 kilowatts of energy that you buy, you have a very low price. If you go over that, now you're in tier 2 and they jack the price up a little bit. If you are now a high usage customer, you're using in the top 25% of people in your area, now you're paying a premium for your energy. The idea is that the more you use, the more expensive it is, and so your parents are going to get on you to make sure all the lights are off so that you don't end up in that top tier. We could have sustainable design. Sustainable design is kind of like this building a little bit. We have windows in all of the classrooms. So do I need to have lights on when I lecture? No, because there's natural light coming in. That natural light gives you enough light that I can have the overhead banks off. We used to, in all of our workrooms, have skylights so that we wouldn't have to turn on the lights in the central hallways. And I say used to because about 7 years ago, someone climbed up on the gym roof at Trabuco and fell through one of the skylights and then sued the district. So they've come in and capped all of our skylights. So we don't have those anymore. I know. Someone was doing something they weren't supposed to do, and because of it, we can't have skylights anymore. I'm kind of bummed. So sustainable design. Building with nature to allow nature to help us not have to use energy. Passive solar energy is kind of cool. Passive solar energy means when you build your house, you orient it in a way that you maximize what the sun can provide. You maximize the heat that the sun can provide to your house. You maximize the light that comes in to your house. Towards the end of March, maybe beginning of April, depending on what my pacing is, you guys are going to get to build your perfect dwelling off-grid and all of that. And some of this sustainable energy use is going to be key to how you build it. Ooh, we're not showing all this. I'd rather show you the green roof one. There is a video there. You can watch it. Kind of cool, but it's essentially orienting your house. This, I think, is even cooler, though. The idea of green roofs. A green roof is planting on top of your roof. This does a couple of things. One, it provides extra space. And when you think about that test question, we're running out of arable land. How can we still produce agriculture? Green roofs are one of it. I could plant on my roof and plant crops up there. It acts as a carbon sink. So anything that is growing is going to take in carbon dioxide. Yay for helping prevent climate change. But what is it going to do for my energy usage? It insulates the building. So it's going to lessen my heating and cooling costs because it adds like a layer of insulation, like putting on a jacket on a building essentially. So all of this dirt and plant material acts as a jacket. This is an example of a museum with a green roof. So the building is here, and then over the top of it, we have a green roof. Right? Like, how much more attractive would your buildings be if you were growing plants and flowers?